Hello everyone, Richard here. A bit of a community update, 3D printing for May. Okay, so April turned out to be quite interesting in a number of different ways for certain companies. We saw all sorts of things going on. We'll talk about that. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for all your feedback, comments, suggestions, and positive and negative things that I've been doing for 3D printing in general. That's including my blogs, YouTube, Google+, all the stuff I release and everything else. So I had some really interesting comments, and they were generally the same or similar across YouTube, Google+, and Blogger. I guess it was nice to hear that people still want the blogs, so that's great. I should still carry on doing those. I was wondering if YouTube was going to just take over everything. People weren't that interested in reading long articles, but I will be getting back to doing some really serious articles on development side of things. The YouTube side's really interesting. I'm not sure whether the news, this type of thing, is something you really want from me, but I'll carry on for a little while, see what happens. Generally, I got the feeling that you wanted more 3D printing developments and more in-depth articles on 3D printing. So that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend some time going over some of the stuff that I've still got outstanding. So I've got loads of stuff that I haven't actually released yet, haven't put the videos out, haven't edited. So I'm going to do all that over the next month or so, just get that all out of the way and then start afresh with some new developments and projects. So what happened in April? Well, it was interesting in a number of different ways. We saw that PinShape got acquired or saved by Formlabs. And that's quite an interesting one because I really expected someone like Shapeways or one of the other sharing sites to snap up PinShape really. So Formlabs doing it, don't really know what I think about that. I guess they're a 3D printing company, manufacturer, and they might have a good reason to have PinShape on board. So we'll get to see sort of what happens there. Makerbot decided to declare that it couldn't manufacture economically in the US, which is really quite interesting, as one of its own main sort of key points used for its sales of its 3D printers. So now they've shipped off the manufacturing off to China, which is basically declaring the fact that, well, they want to die by 1,000 cuts by the sounds of things. So it's very strange, not completely unexpected until, in fact, not at all unexpected. But yeah, the 3D printing community just sort of grunts and ignores them and carries on regardless. So that's Makerbot. LulzBot released the TAS. Well, they didn't actually release it, they announced it. It's going to be available in a couple of weeks' time. Matter Hackers have got it up on their site for pre-sale for about $2,500 US. Haven't really seen any signs of it over in the UK and Europe. A little bit tricky to get hold of those sort of machines unless you buy direct. Would really like to know a little bit more about that machine, but it's got a bit of an embargo at the moment on people releasing videos and generally talking about it, which is slightly odd for such an open source company like LulzBot. But we'll see, I'm sure, a lot more about the TAS 6 coming out very soon in news and reviews. And if you actually wanted to make one, of course, the files are already up on the LulzBot site, so you could actually just go and make your own and get it up and use it probably even before the release if you're really keen. Anyway, so that's quite interesting that LulzBot are obviously still managing to economically make, manufacture, design and sell for a reasonably high price a 3D printer in the US, and they're still doing very well. And so are guys like PrinterBot and everyone else really. So it's interesting on that side of things that companies like Makerbot decide to ship everything off to China because really they just lose their unique, well, something. They lose something from whether that's just more credibility or, yeah, who knows. But again, if you can't manufacture locally, if you can't add the extra value, yeah, it becomes a little bit more tricky to sort of get people convinced that your machine's worth spending all that money on, really. We also saw that OLO got funded to the tune of about 2.3 million. That was really quite interesting. There's about 3,000 or so comments on the Kickstarter and not a huge amount of info from the creators. So where that's going, how that's going to happen, not really sure. It's something I'm really not convinced that it's something that people will use. I guess it's fine, it's $100, it's a 3D printer, Daylight resin's great, but you know, you're just not, it's going to be a bit of a toy. You're going to use it once or twice. You're going to use up your little tiny jar of resin, and then that's all you're going to do with it if they get it finished. So we'll certainly be checking back before the September deadline on that one to see how things are going. We had quite a few Kickstarters for new printers as well, and there seems to be a theme going on with Delta printers. So Billy Zelsnack produced the Polygon Delta, which is a really nice machine that he's been developing in the open community and blogging and tweeting about it and putting over stuff on Google Plus for at least 12 months, if not 18 months. It's been really interesting watching his twists and turns and developments and design decisions on that machine. And now it's up on Kickstarter, and I think it's actually sold out. It's about $24,000 or so, and it's completely sold out. He only does a relatively small manufacturing run to make sure he can meet all of the demand, which is really nice actually. His first Kickstarter went really well, so I can imagine this one's going to go just as well. So really big congratulations for Billy on that one, and the machine looks fantastic. Another one we had, Andrew Wade, another Delta 3D printer, which has just actually gone up a few days ago, so it's early days for still the campaign, and that's the Spatial 1. Now this is another Delta printer. It's quite a beefy machine. It's quite a serious machine. Well built, well designed. Andrew's a core engineer really, so you're not going to see any marketing fluff. I don't think he's even got a video up there really describing what he's done, but he has spent a lot of time, energy and effort put into this campaign for the development, and he really wants to make a go of it with 3D printing and start producing machines in kits to sell and generate enough business to you know, justify a 3D printing company that he wants to run. So that's really great. If you can find your way to just supporting him or just talking about the machine, or even if you've got questions, whatever, fire off some messages. It's a great machine. I actually had it for about 4 or 5 months, doing a bit of smoothie development, various other things. It's running some really interesting code, and the tool chain is quite nice that he's got in there for sort of getting everything printed. Another Kickstarter we saw was by Polymaker. This time not a machine, well, it is a machine, but not a 3D printer. It's a machine for polishing. So they developed the Polysher and the Polysmooth materials. This is one I've actually decided to back myself, put some money down to do that, because I'm quite interested in what they're doing, and it looks like they're developing a nice system that could be used for a bit better prototypes. And when I say that, I mean sometimes you just want a nice looking object. It doesn't have to be particularly functional or strong or anything like that. You just want it to look really good. And the Polysher and the Polysmooth is a PVB material, which Polymaker are doing in conjunction with the polysmoothing system, using IPA as the medium for actually doing the smoothing, which will eat away at the surface and on the PVB and make it a lot smoother, smoothing out all of the layer lines and just generally melting it a little bit. So they're using sort of an atomizing type technology, and it's interesting that they've developed this machine and put it up for Kickstarter. So I think it's about $300,000 or so at the moment, so it's well over the campaign goal of 100,000. But it's doing well, and I'm really interested to see how they will do with that. I would have probably thought that they could have got away with a machine, some sort of system where they used like water and IPA, maybe a 50-50 mix, and used a cyclonic action to actually sort of spin the parts in, slowly dissolving the surface and melting the surface away. But maybe they tried that, and the atomizing, vaporizing solutions just work a lot better. So really interested to see how they do on that, whether they keep up with the developments. They've got a lot more demand now than I guess they thought they may have, and it's their first actual physical machine that they're doing, and it's got some electronics in. It's got a lift stage in for the Z that moves it up and down, so we'll see. Mr. Beam 2 also got funded to almost €1 million, which has been really quite a nice one to watch over on Kickstarter. Again, it's a laser cutter slash etcher, more of an etcher really. It can cut thin materials. It's one of those projects where I'd have liked, and I don't have a laser cutter, I've always wanted one, can't really justify it, and I still couldn't justify it even with Mr. Beam, because it's not a low-cost laser cutter, and it doesn't quite cut thick material as you may want to do sort of serious makering, and it's sort of more of a general purpose etcher, card cutting, leather, that sort of thing. So you can do some interesting things with it, but for me it was not quite one thing or the other. It could have been a cheaper etcher or a more expensive sort of laser cutter that could cut more thicker materials, and then maybe I'd have been tempted. But overall, I wish them the very best success. Mr. Beam 1 was great, and I guess this Mr. Beam 2 is going to be just as well received by the community as well when that Kickstarter finishes. So congratulations to them. Another interesting one over on Kickstarter is the FormBox, and this is basically a vacuum forming system, and their key sales point seems to be that you use your own vacuum cleaner. So you sort of plug it in and it's a box with a grill and a halogen heater that will warm up your plastic. Okay, fairly straightforward. It's not the cheapest in the world again. They seem to have spent a long time developing it. I'm not quite sure why it was so complicated. And the biggest problem I've got with the FormBox is that they're going to take yet another year before they deliver the Kickstarters, which is just mind-blowing really. I mean, I could probably stop this video, go out in the garage and build one in a few hours. So, okay, that's not production manufacturing and all that, but what's the problem? Why is it going to take a year for you to get this out in the marketplace? So I wouldn't back a campaign that takes a year to do something as fairly straightforward as a vacuum forming machine that's using your own vacuum cleaner. So that, for me, that one is a little bit misstepped. I don't quite understand why it's going to take so long for them to deliver that to the backers of this Kickstarter. It's doing quite well, but yeah, I guess it's fairly straightforward, and why aren't you doing it quicker would be my my question there. Gina managed to get a really successful Patreon campaign going, so OctoPrint is now saved, if you like. She can actually spend more time and effort with the promise that money will be coming in every month to at least keep her alive and sane, so she can do some really interesting OctoPrint development for all the community to enjoy. So congratulations, Gina, and I hope that carries on. I hope you don't get too stressed out by all the pressures or whatever else that comes with having to do that as your main job. On that side, I've just literally read that Tom is also starting a Patreon campaign. I haven't even looked at it yet, haven't had a chance, but that's great news. So Tom's decided he's going to go full-time 3D printing, not going to go back to the day job, and actually jump in feet first and really go for it. So have a look at the campaign. I encourage you to do so as well and try and support Tom. He's really going for the 3D printing side of things. The YouTube channels are really fantastic. Everything he does is really well polished, and I'm sure that will continue in his new campaign as well. So we'll see, and I really wish him the very best of luck. So well done, Tom, and good luck with it all. We had a little bit of community drama, not much. I guess you can't really count the Makerbot moving to China as community drama because no one really paid it any attention, but there was a little bit of community drama going on around the big box and around E3D, and it's something that sort of passed me by a little bit. I didn't quite catch up with it until a few days ago, but yeah, for the last few weeks people have been moaning and complaining on Reddit and generally in the forums and things about the campaign that E3D and the big box guys decided to launch for a mascot, a design and development of a mascot that they were going to use for the big box to sort of just promote big box and promote it, that type of thing. And a lot of people have picked up the sort of maybe the wrong end of the stick and think that E3D and the big box guys wanted to create a free mascot. They wanted to get designers to work for free and produce something for them. I don't know the full story. I can only imagine really what the guys at E3D and Big Box are thinking, and they're probably sat there drinking their cup of tea and thinking, yeah, this is rather ridiculous. This was supposed to be a fun campaign. We're going to give away a Big Box, and if people want to take it the wrong way, bit of a shame. But I went down to see the guys at E3D a couple of weeks ago, and all I can say is they've got plenty of money. If they wanted to design a small mascot for Big Box and for E3D, they could pay someone quite easily to do it. They're expanding heavily, employing at least 2 people every single month. They've done that for the last 12 months. They're expanding into a new unit at the moment, Unit 3, and it's absolutely huge, massive lab for science. So they're literally doing enormous amounts of development. They're taking on people. The business is growing faster than they can probably even imagine, but I guess some things just slipped through the net, and maybe this was a communication side of things that just didn't quite happen. People got the wrong end of the stick, but I reached out to them and they say they're going to give a statement to the community. So what that will be, who knows? But I can imagine they must be thinking, well, yeah, they're only trying to help and they're only trying to do some good things. And a competition to generate a mascot, designers need to chill out a little bit. Either get involved or don't moan about it. While I was down at E3D, they also handed me one of their new developments that they've been doing, and this was a little silicone boot that they've put on the ends of their hot ends. And at the moment they've done one, they've moulded one up. This is squishy silicone that can go up to 300 degrees C, and basically it's a boot that fits over both the hot end and the nozzle and just allows the filament to come extruded out of the nozzle, and it will stop any gunk and goo and filament residue building up on the nozzle. So it's a really nice little thing. It's got these little tabs around the side. It's all designed to fit perfectly on the E3D V6. They've only got a few of these out just to try at the moment, so they won't be available quite yet, but they're planning on making these available. You may have to trim off a tiny bit there just to get everything to fit perfectly, but these are something that have been experimented with for some time by different people, including E3D. The idea is that you can actually then have a much nicer surface when you're printing, especially filled materials, wood fills and carbon fibres and things that tend to want to stick to brass or hardened nozzles. You can still go up to high temperatures with all of these boots, and also you can then have a lot more hard cooling, so you can have your part cooling fan coming on really hard, 100% if you'd like, and it won't actually affect the block quite as much, the heater block quite as much. So that's the idea. You can actually insulate it a little bit more. It's been done with Kapton tape and various other things, but having a nice little boot that you can clip on, wrap round and secure in place and then throw away, you know, these aren't going to be that expensive, so the idea is to use them until they wear out and then throw them away and put a new one on. So that's another little interesting one to look out for from the guys from E3D. Another interesting material sample came through, and I've been trying that out, and this time it's the eSun cleaning filament. Now this is something I've pretty much ignored because I do the nylon cold pull method, which is great, and you basically just put a nylon filament strand into your printer, you heat it up to around 270, 280 degrees, and you push through, keep pushing, and then you let that cool down to around 90 degrees, and then you do a pull. And when you pull that out, it pulls out all the gunk and everything else out of the end of your hot end and the nozzle, and that works quite well. And I've been doing that for some time. I decided to give this a go because people said, yeah, it's great, it works really well, and I totally agree with them. It really does. So this is eSun's filament. You don't need a great deal of it, so it comes in sort of, I think, like 125 gram rolls or so. And I actually found that if I use the 1.75, which isn't particularly well toleranced, but you don't need it to be because you're only doing this manually. And you can use this in the 3mm machine as well. I've used this in the BCN Sigma, and it pulls out so much gunk you wouldn't believe. I had a hot end that ran for probably around 30 kilograms, 35, maybe even 40 kilograms worth of stuff. Mostly PLA, a little bit of PET and various other materials have gone through there. And I did the nylon clean pull and it seemed okay, no problems, got quite a lot of gunk out of it. This was after quite a long period of time of use. And then afterwards I used the eSun cleaning filament and a whole load more gunk came out. And basically this is professional cleaning material, the stuff they use for actually cleaning out proper extrusion systems, screw extruders. So they've put this into a filament that you can then actually use. You're not designed to print with it, but you can feed this through, push this through and pull out all the gunk, and it's actually really super slippy, so it grips to everything other than metal. It grips to all sorts of gunk and any carbonized residues, even PLAs, which get really nastily burnt onto the inside of your nozzles, and it just pulls that out, and it's very ultra slippy against the metal. So, and it really, really works. I've been absolutely amazed how well it works. So certainly recommend that. Get yourself hold of a roll, and you don't need to mess around with nylons and cold pulls and things again. You can use this, which definitely works. So I'd really recommend doing that. A few things I've been up to. I've got Project Snowflake finished. I'll give a little bit more of a video on that. This was a project I was doing with my daughter, Arduino, 3D printing, light, interesting, all sorts of objects coming out of there. So really good little project. that was great, a learning experience with my daughter. Also got the steampunk octopus finally finished. This turned out to be quite a laborious project, and here we go. So this turned out really well in the end, and my daughter finished this off. I'm sick of printing tentacles. This was quite a good test piece actually. I was using this as an excuse to test all sorts of different materials, but when we actually had to finish it, I had to actually then use quite a lot of material to get all of the tentacles printed, and my daughter sat down, assembled it all, carefully cleaned up all the bits that she needed to do, and get this all lovely done. So it's quite heavy actually. It's surprising how much material this used up, but yeah, I'll probably do a little post on especially the cleanup, because I used quite a lot of support material around the back here, and that was just awful to remove. It was almost an example of why we shouldn't be using support material with the same material, especially not PLA, because it just hates being pulled away from itself, and why we need more support materials, PVA based and scaffold and all sorts of other materials that are starting to come out. Even the Polymaker support, which is actually really nice, you just peel away. So we need more support materials and multi-extruder systems that we can actually do more innovative 3D printing with, and not have spending hours and hours or ages pulling away all of that horrible support material and then doing cleanup on it. I also seem to be in a bit of an ever-ending state of testing materials at the moment, and just doing a lot of material development work and feedback for individuals and a few companies that have asked me to test some different materials. So it's been quite interesting and quite nice to actually focus on the materials side. You really start to see the varying differences in the types of materials, and especially the additives and things that people put in to materials to make them flow better, or to work, or stop warping, or doing all sorts of different things. It's been a real innovation with some materials, especially with nylons and things, because a whole load of horrible things have to happen to make nylon 3D print nicely. So it's been really interesting doing that over the last year or so, and there's still plenty more to do, and materials seem to be the one constant thing in 3D printing for the community that people can't get enough of. So materials are just going to be happening all the time, I'm sure. Okay, so that was a bit of a news roundup for May. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, comment, feedback, tell me what you liked, didn't like, and see you next time. Thanks ever so much for listening.